Yes, ladies and germs, welcome to the Side Seat Poopcast. As Eric has changed the name, I'm just kidding. No, welcome to the Side Seat Podcast. We're here on another glorious rainy night here in the good old Quad Cities in Rock Island. I'm joined by Jake Turner and Mr. Eric Nesbitt as usual, and today we are joined by Eric.
A high school buddy of mine and Eastern Illinois graduate and wrestling teammate of Matt Hughes, Eric Gustafson.
Hi, thank you very much. You worked in the Matt Hughes thing in there.
All right,
There you
awesome.
go. Any big names we can plug here?
We can. Unfortunately, today we are not at the Switch Stand Skate Shop in Rock Island. We are down the street on 3rd Avenue at the Roztalks. Due to circumstances out of our control, we had to move down here. So we're now sitting at this great place, Roztalks, right here in Rock Island, 2108 3rd Avenue. Make sure you come see Benjamin and check out all their great specials, man. They got my favorite beer here. They got Revolution Brewery. So.
Yeah, they've got beer here.
Yeah, Eugene Porter, I think you picked
Yeah,
up.
Eugene Porter. It's like
I got the
7%
anti-hero.
alcohol. I was not aware.
Yeah, and Eric went with a nice Asian flavored tiger beer there, and Jake, good old fashioned American
Union made beer.
Yeah,
PBR.
There you go. So
And that's why we call him the Pride of Barstow.
the pride of Barstow's with us today.
There's been plenty of PBRs drank in Barstow, Illinois.
Hey, maybe there's been a lot of poop in Barstow too. Don't mind that. We might save that
There's
for
a
another
lot of
time.
flood water there.
That
So.
flood water, okay. there we
That's
go.
what you call it there?
Yeah. So anyways, we'll get to that story another time. But hey, you guys see all the? Did you guys get to check out Record Store Day yesterday?
Yes, I stopped down at Ragged Records in Davenport, Iowa.
Hello, Bob.
And said hi to Bob, and it was so busy with wall-to-wall people, I went straight to the Deep Purple section, found the original out-of-print copy of Slaves and Masters, and bought it and got out of there because it was
Yeah.
just too busy for me.
It really was packed. Jake, did you make it
No,
anyway?
I couldn't, unfortunately.
Yeah, you were at work, I think, right?
Yeah, I was working. Funds don't really call for it right now,
Yeah.
which is completely devastating.
Yeah. But, there was a lot of things. I didn't get my Wu-Tang vinyl that I wanted. A couple other things were kind of gone that I kind of missed out on because I didn't go early enough. But I did check out some of the music. And character artist Bill Douglas, he does my Christmas cards. He was there doing blank album covers. And, he asked me if I wanted anything. So I said, well, of course. I never reject a piece from Bill Douglas. And I went to go look in the punk section just to kind of see what was going on, and I know it's on the page of the Quad City Music Traders,
Music lovers, collectors, and traders.
Yes, it's on the Facebook page there, and I found Andrew WK's "I Get Wet," and so I did a little homage to that cover. It's pretty interesting looking. So it was a successful record store day for that place. I saw them on the news later in the night, and. Looks like they had a really big turnout throughout the day, so that was pretty cool.
It's good to see.
Yeah, when I went to check out and I talked to Bob just briefly, I said, oh, it looks like it's going to be a successful day. And he's like, well, we'll see at the end of the day and see if I sell more than I bought.
Yeah, right, exactly. So, I mean, it's always a fun event. I had a lot of fun at the Black Friday one last year. Excuse me, sorry, and this year's is pretty good too. So, I'm looking forward to the next time they host one of those events. So, but along with that, they also announced a couple of shows here in the Quad Cities, starting with next week's, which I won't be here. Black Star Riders is going to be over at Rascals on April 25th. So I know you're kind of upset about it, Eric. That you may not be able to.
Well, I missed them the first time they were here, which was last year, and I have made plans with my wife next Saturday that I'm not going to break. So it looks like I'll be missing them for the second time. So
Well, the way Kenny gets those guys in there, he seems to get them there probably once every 2 cycles. So
Yeah.
hopefully they'll be back again. I mean, he's good about getting those bands in.
Yep.
So
Yeah, and it seems like Rascals is trying to kind of get those bigger names.
I mean, they got the winery dogs in there
Yeah.
last year.
And I
Yeah, it
missed
seems
that
like
one,
they
too.
always have shows going on.
Yeah.
They've
Yeah.
always got something going on over there.
I know
I just wish that there was a better way that you just really never know about who they're bringing in unless you're a regular at Rascals bar itself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
I
if
mean,
you get on their
phrase. Yeah,
page.
they don't do advertising on radio or nothing. They just
Yeah.
basically it's word of mouth and Facebook, which evidently is working because he
Yeah.
hasn't had to resort to radio or whatever.
really.
More, I mean, he's got such a dedicated following. Of
Yeah.
people going there, and
I mean,
me
I know-
being one of them. I mean,
I know a lot of people that go there, and you know, they get the word out there. Now, the one that I don't know they did kind of promote was the Bret Michaels was, you know, the last time he came, which there's a funny story I'll have to share about later, but it's a little bit it's a little bit not appropriate for this show, but Bret Michaels is coming back to the Quad Cities this summer for Rock the District, and I think 3 Years Hollow is opening for him. So I you know, hey, if I happen to make it to that show, I may go to it, but we'll see.
Yeah,
If I make it to that show, it's 'cause
I
I'm
bet you I
inside
got
having
something
beer.
going on.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I really wished you would have left that news tidbit out of there. That's just something.
It's,
That
well,
you
you
know,
know,
I try to support Rock the District as
Yeah.
much as I can because it's hard to get big bands in here, especially when there's no active radio or nothing. But this one, I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, if it was like Poison,
Yeah.
I'd think about it. But now, like the Bret Michaels solo stuff is like him doing covers of Sublime and shit.
Oh,
Oh my
Really?
gosh.
don't
And
know.
another
I
weird
don't
thing
like
about it too is that didn't Bret Michaels a handful of years ago try to convert into country?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did he?
Pretty much, it's pretty much like his
Yeah.
solo act is like mostly him doing acoustic stuff.
Oh.
It's really not.
Right.
It's like he's embarrassed of his roots, which is kind of funny because like all the other guys are doing just
Yeah, they
fine.
embrace it, they-
well, like they just got done. They played with Brandon Gibbs from Burlington on the Metal Cruise or whatever.
Right.
Oh, okay.
They just played there last night, so it's
Really?
Poison with Brandon Gibbs, which is really cool. I think.
Oh, that's interesting. Well,
Yeah, a little off topic, but meh.
Well, you know, like I said, it's just the diversity of things coming around here. And another band coming August 7th to the Adlers, Shinedown. They're promoting that one as an intimate night with Shinedown. So would that be kind of along the lines of what you witnessed with Alice in Chains? Was that like an intimate night or?
There was nothing intimate about that night.
it was
It
pretty
was
good
loud and it was ruckus and it
Good.
was exciting because you know my favorite time to go see a show is when you walk into a concert hall and it's a little bit ornery, and it's
Yeah.
a little wild, and you're like thinking maybe I might not just get out of here alive tonight.
Yeah.
I like that, and that's what
Yeah.
the Alice in Chains show was like.
That's
So,
awesome.
That's good. Well, we'll see what happens with Shinedown then. Huh?
yeah, definitely.
So, Eric Gustafson.
Yes, yes.
You want to give us a little background on what you did? Because we were going to do the skate shop, which you kind of, we didn't know if it really kind of blended in with what you do, but you are a former,
Oh, like when I used to skate and,
Yeah,
and
you used to-
ride bikes.
Well,
Yeah,
Let's
well-
touch a little bit about when you were younger and you were on the ground patrol and things like that. So
Yeah, that was like another lifetime ago. But I was really, really dedicated into that type of stuff, and I probably, you know, my friends and I, we were in a band and we used to do shows all over, and it was totally just kids promoting for themselves. We had our friend was the manager.
yeah.
We had the PA system, all that stuff. We had no adults, and so we booked the shows all ourselves, and we just hung out with, you know, kind of. I guess people would probably think they were sort of seedy, you know, people and everything, but really they weren't. They were just people that loved to ride or to skate and stuff too, and it was just that was totally my life back then, you know. And I've transitioned on other things, but I still. You know, I still have my bike. I don't ride my bike much anymore.
Yeah.
But I still have it, and I still have a few boards, and I've gone down to the skate park a few times.
Yeah.
I've taken my kids. My kids have boards and bikes.
Oh, awesome.
They do stuff like that. They're not into it like I was. I was like obsessively into
Yeah.
it. But one of the cool things I really liked about it was that it was such a tight group of people. So it was just like insiders, and we all had just that one common thread.
Yeah.
And then everybody else was like, you know, looking at us like
you
we
guys
were
are the weird
freaks.
guys.
Right. So we would just back in those days where they didn't have skate parks, so there was no community support or anything. So we'd just go to a parking lot and then get kicked out of a parking lot and then just go to another parking
Find the
lot,
next place.
get kicked out of another parking lot, and so we always rode with a chip on our shoulders, and that sort of made us even more proud. And because of that, when we would ride, we would listen to music and stuff too.
Yeah.
And so that's how I got into like somebody would be like start playing some like Agent Orange, for example, or something, and I was like, wow, who is that? Oh, it's this band from Florida called Agent Orange. And then someone from Chicago or something would come by, and he'd have his music and Jane's Addiction or Gangrene or all those old, like, just that new sort of wave of kind of punk, kind of
that SoCal
like
punk thing
edge,
going on.
like the same stuff that we were kind of going through and
Yeah.
feeling. That was kind of how I got into music because I could relate to that kind of stuff, and so I always sort of carried that with me. And you know,
So when you met these people that came in from different cities and stuff, would you guys like exchange tapes and like record tapes and stuff like that?
yeah, because everything was just tapes. You know,
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
no CDs back
Yeah.
then. So yeah, we would have tapes and. We would stay up all night and writing, and back in those days, it was one of those things where you'd call your parents and say, "Hey, I'm spending the night at
Yeah.
this dude's house," and then that dude would call and say, "I'm spending the night here," and then we'd stay at like Stevens Park
Yeah.
all night and just do that all through the night, and then, you know, that guy would go back to Chicago, but then he'd always, you know, they'd come back, and so
Yeah.
we always had a real close knit, and it
Nice.
always involved writing and music.
Nice. Well, that's that's what we're here for, man. That's what the Side Seat Podcast is. And
I do have to interject on a funny
Sure.
story about when Eric and I were our senior years in high school, and I've said this story
does it
before.
involve poop?
No, it does not involve poop.
Okay.
But
Not this one.
No, that's not this story. But it's kind of funny because I used to pick Eric up in the mornings. We go to Rocky. I'd pick him up in the mornings, and we'd always listen to like Red Hot Chili Peppers, Mother's Milk, or
Yeah, that was another big one.
Yeah, Faith No More, The Real Thing.
Right.
And then,
Yeah, Faith No
you know,
More,
it's like,
yeah.
it was that, remember I tell you that 1988, 89, 90 music, that resurgence with, you know, the Cure, Disintegration, and you know,
Right.
the Cult Sonic Temple. We'd listen to all that stuff
Oh, yeah,
back and
yeah.
forth to school, even though it wasn't a very long ride.
Yeah,
It was like,
yeah.
you know, 10-minute ride, 5-minute ride, all depends what traffic was. But anyway, so finally, you know, I'm always one to try to listen to different things, and one morning I popped in Soul to Soul,
Okay.
and I was listening to it, and you know, Soul to Soul was a European R&B act
Yeah.
from London, and they were the song "Back to Life, Back to Reality."
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't know what you're talking about, but yeah, now
Yeah,
I know.
I had that thing
Back
in,
to
and
life.
and Eric, I would play that thing, and he'd get so pissed off at me because he still wanted to listen. I was like, man, I got to
Yeah.
listen to other things, man. I just can't listen to the Chili Peppers. He'd press stop or hit eject or whatever else on it, and I'd pop it back in, and we'd fight all the way back and forth to school
Yeah,
one day.
I took pride in that, and it would like upset me. To this day, I'll go to parties and stuff, and my wife will be hanging out with her friends, and they'd just be listening just to the total crap.
Yeah.
And they'll be singing and dancing. Hey, it takes two to make a thing go right, or whatever, something terrible, and I just have to bite my tongue.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't freaking. I'm gonna go nuts,
Yeah.
and then I'll try to slide, you know, something in, and everything just gets quiet for a while, and then now boom, they go back to just listening to. So that's where the poop comes back in.
Yeah.
Right. That
Yeah,
kinda
you
goes
guys
right
know.
back in
You
there.
guys know I'm a big European R&B
Yeah,
fan.
yeah.
So, and I don't really like American R&B. I prefer how the Europeans do it. So that the Soul to Soul stuff kind of hooked me into all that other stuff. So, but it used to piss him off so bad.
Yeah.
I'd listen to it. Finally, he just gave up, and I think he put 2 fingers in his ears all the way to
Yeah.
school.
I tried to broad, like we listened to Urban Dance Squad. That
Yeah,
was totally
yeah.
different,
That
but
was a-
it was cool because no one else did either. You
Yeah.
know, so I still had that
Little
that
edge.
cool thing. Yeah, there's
That would be
always
that
little
would be a
edge.
really great topic for a podcast. Is just doing one on like the Urban Dance Squad. It was a crossover band from the late '80s. They did kind of like a hip hop, punk rock type feel
Yeah,
to
I'm not
it.
sure.
It was like
It's hard to
Familiar-
categorize that.
Are you familiar with
No,
that?
there.
No,
it's,
that's
it
gonna,
was
that's
just
gonna
like
be some. I'll get school.
yeah,
on that.
it's just like a little blip in the radar where it didn't fit into any certain category.
yeah.
I don't
Their
know
one big
how-
hit was "Deeper Shade of Soul." They came out with a
Oh,
song
yeah,
called
yeah, I
"Deeper
guess that-
Shade
yeah.
of Soul," and it kind of hit the
Mental
billboards.
floss for the globe.
Yeah, and their debut album was called "Mental Floss for the Globe," and we jammed that.
Yeah, and that was
Religiously.
cool, and that was almost kind of like rap, sort of in a way.
He
That was
did.
cool.
It was weird because it was done like it was like hip hop done like in like almost like a sped up way. It was like really fast, but yet the music was fast, but his vocals and when he would rap, it was
like
slowed
slow.
down.
Huh.
It was
Right.
strange.
Yeah, it was really
Uh,
unique.
it was very unique,
unique.
yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway.
so that's
Yeah.
you know we kind of broadened our horizons in some aspects.
Yes,
But I
yeah.
just
Nice.
I made sure I kept a buffer zone between Belle Biv DeVoe and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I gotta. I mean, I can't-
American hip hop. I'm
Yeah,
not
there
big
you
on
go.
it, though.
Yeah.
Well, you know that, and that kind of I can see where we could transition to that because different styles of different music kind of you know like to come together sometimes, and that is the topic of this week's episode, which is supergroups. I know Eric, you've been kind of crunching your brain on this one and excited to do it, and I didn't even know what I was going to do until a little bit earlier today. So, but I got one in. I think we all got one, and he put it up on the page.
Right.
So let's just jump right into it. And the super group that I'm going to go with is a little bit more my speed because it came out. Like I kind of was like a Mudvayne, Korn, Slipknot kid. Back in my junior high era. So it was cool to see this project called Hell Yeah come out. Hell Yeah is the current lineup is Chad Gray, the lead singer from Mudvayne,
Yep.
Tom Maxwell from Nothing Face, the guitarist, and Vinnie Paul from Pantera and Damage Plan. So the current bassist is Kyle Sanders from I'm not familiar with these bands. Screw, Blood Simple, and Monstro. Nothing.
I'm not.
Yeah, see,
I might have heard of Blood Simple, but I don't know any like specifically things.
yeah, and I mean those are just I'm sure they're just like a metal group or some metal groups. And then the other guitarist is Christian Brady from Magnify and Uberschall. He's another guitarist. So and they replaced Bob Zilla from Damage Plan and Greg Tribbett also from Mudvayne. So but I was lucky enough to catch the original incarnation back when they came up to the Dome on Brady when they were having shows.
Oh.
So they only had a few shows.
I didn't
but-
realize they did that there.
Yeah, I think that was like their first big one. Who was it? I think it was Machine Head
Yeah.
and
Head, yeah.
Non-Point and Hell Yeah were on that show. So, and it was an amazing show. Like the energy was great. And the notable thing about Hell Yeah was this was Vinnie Paul's kind of comeback from his he had an 18-month hiatus. After Dimebag had been shot at that show, and I think it took a lot of Chad and Tom were looking to bring somebody in, and they wanted Vinnie Paul, and they kept trying and trying. He kept telling them no, from what I'm hearing and from what I read and watched some interviews on. And finally, Vinnie Paul just said, hey, maybe this might be a good thing, to try and get back out there, trying to get over the pain of, losing a brother. So I think that was really cool. I mean, there's a lot. Pantera's like a lot of wrestling fans love Pantera because of Rob Van Dam, and that's how I came along from them. So that's how I knew Vinnie Paul and all that, Dimebag and all that stuff. So, but yeah, they're still going. It was 2007, but I guess the plans for this band went as far back as 2001. When they were running across each other in tours, like Nothing Face and Mudvayne and stuff. So. And then finally, it just got to a point where Mudvayne wasn't really doing anything, and Nothing Face was deciding on whether or not they needed to get a new album out or not. So they finally got all together and worked out. And so far, they have 4 albums. The first one, the self-titled Hell Yeah, it went to number 9 on the Billboard 200. So that was a neat fact. I didn't even know that. So and that was a good CD. I picked that one up at the show because I was like, yeah, I'd heard the stuff online and whatnot. I was like, I'm gonna pick up the whole disc because I like what I hear, and I enjoyed it a lot. And then they came out with Stampede, which reached number 8. It was their highest ranking album. It was about 2 years later that one came out. And then Band of Brothers another 2 years later, and then their most recent one, which came out last year, was Blood for Blood, and that was the only album to feature Kevin Churko. Are you guys familiar with that name? He's done some stuff with like Ozzy, and I think he's just like a studio musician for hire.
Probably.
So,
Yeah.
so but I was looking at his resume there, and he has quite a bit of names on there. But yeah, no, they have the current lineup with Christian and Kyle, and they're going on Mayhem Fest this year. I just found this out. They're going on with Slayer and King Diamond and Devil Wears Prada, which the last band, whatever. But
Right.
I saw that King Diamond's going to be on Mayhem Fest with them. I was like,
That's
awesome.
really
Yeah.
weird because isn't their message like real positive vibes in their music?
kind of more,
Yeah.
yeah, more like a chill, nothing, not as positive as Hatebreed. They're really positive, but no, they're more like relaxing and enjoying life as it comes. I think
Okay.
so. And they were that's kind of what Chad was going for. Kind of with his sound, like kind of outlawish, like Western, like Southern, or not Western, Southern rock. And that's kind of, there's a Pantera influence in there. And, you can definitely hear the kind of style that they wanted to get with that whole band. So, like I said, I enjoy them. And I know they're playing Tinley Park, this summer. So I might check it out.
Yeah,
So,
that's an awesome place to see a show.
yeah. I mean, I've been there for a few shows. And I want to go back as much as I can because it's a nice venue. So
Did you know that Chad Gray is a semi-local guy?
semi-local as
Yeah.
far as like an hour and a half away.
Yeah.
Is he in
Yeah,
Peoria?
It's
Peoria.
a Peoria. The
Yeah.
whole
No,
Mudvayne
yeah,
is
all
a Peoria.
Mudvayne is,
Yeah.
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 And what was that bass player's name from Mudvayne?
The skinny guy, the skinny bald.
Yeah,
guy,
he's
I can't
bald,
remember,
and I
yeah.
think he was originally from Springfield, but he was he was really, really
Yeah,
good.
he's
And I
really
don't know,
fast.
and I don't know what happened to him. He was kind of a Les Claypool type of a
Yeah.
guy.
I think he went off to do his own things. I don't know if he
Yeah.
was recording with other people or whatnot, but
might be. I don't
Once
know.
again, I think as we talked too, is like, you know, the Mudvayne thing off of the Hell Yeah subject was Mudvayne kind of fell because the whole image thing, their whole weird image that they did,
Yeah.
it got real popular really quick. It was like, okay, this is
Yeah.
you're not
Yeah.
Kiss, man.
Yeah, they had like that first. What was the first record called? Was that LD?
LD50?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That thing was huge.
Yeah.
And then they did a couple other ones I remember seeing here. And there.
Yeah.
And it's like,
there was a few, and then they did come back with like a new image, kind of like a more mature image, I
yeah,
guess.
because
where-
they had the tornado on the cover. With
Yeah.
the bear. I remember that.
I can't
remember the
remember
name
the
of it,
call,
but
but
yeah, I
they-
mean that record was alright. I
Yeah.
listened to it a lot. I remember
And-
that, but
like I said, it was a really, really fun live show to see them, and
I know a lot of friends. I didn't go to that show. I know a lot
Yeah.
of friends that went to that show, and they said it was one of the best shows I've ever seen.
yeah, it was really good. I guess I didn't. There was some commotion at the front of the,
When they
like
played
the
at the
entrance.
Capitol?
No, no,
Because they did. Or
that was Mudvayne.
Mudvayne played at the
Yeah,
Capitol.
we're I jumped back to
Oh,
hell, yeah,
sorry,
at the
sorry.
Dome. There was some commotion that went on by the entrance. I didn't know what was going on until and then like a year later, my buddy's like, "Hey, you remember that time I got in the fight at the Hell Yeah show?" I was like, "No, when was that?" He's like, "Yeah, man, I was one of those guys that got arrested." I was like, "What?" or was like with the cops or something. I was like, "That was you?" Like there was a big fight that went on, and it was him and some other guy. I was like, "Really?" I didn't know that. I was too busy in the front
Yeah.
row. So
That'll happen.
you know, it was just a fun show. And that kind of, I think that show may have started my little guitar tab collection because I ended up catching Greg Tribbett's little. It's a small one. It was really small because he's
A
a small.
pig? Is a
yeah,
pig?
guitar pick.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and it was really small, and he's a small guy. Like he must have small hands too. But I was surprised I found it because I not found it, but that I saw where it was because I was like I wouldn't have saw that if I wasn't looking right
Right
at that
there,
moment.
yeah.
So and I got it. And I was like, oh sweet. So and that kind of started my little collection. So that was a fun show, man. And I still keep up with these guys from time to time, and it's good to hear. So I think the best part about it is that Vinnie Paul was able to come back and get back into the groove of things with a big project like this.
Right, yeah, it's nice to see him get back out there. It was his first band without his brother.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's a long time to.
Yeah,
you
18
know.
months, man. I mean, I could only imagine what was going through his mind and kind of the stuff that was being held back. So,
Right.
So I mean, and that's kind of what the super groups are cool because it kind of took some things that I was, comfortable with and kind of knew and happened to make this pretty awesome band. So I mean, this kind of bands I like to find. So and I'm sure you found a good one there, Jake.
Oh yeah, I found. I was gonna do a Velvet Revolver.
Yeah.
But I was
Yeah.
had a rope tied around my neck, told me not to. So
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit.
I decided to go with Neurotic Outsiders.
Yeah, it's an awesome band.
Yeah. It was formed in '95, just from guys hanging out in the Viper Room, playing
Yeah.
shows, just for fun.
Like
and-
the California bar there.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep. And the very first incarnation had Billy Idol and Stevie Stevens
Oh.
with Duff McKagan from Guns N' Roses
Yeah.
and Matt Sorum from Guns N' Roses. And for whatever, Billy Idol and Stevie leaving and doing their own thing, going
Yeah.
back doing Billy stuff.
Yeah.
And so then Steve Jones from the Sex Pistols joined, and John Taylor, from Duran Duran joined. Band didn't last that long. It was like 2 years. They put out a record. They did a 5-song EP that was released only in Japan. It was a really cool band because, they're all really talented. So they all sang. Duff sang a couple songs.
They took turn being like the vocalist.
Yeah, like lead vocalist. John Taylor sang 2 or 3 songs. Steve Jones sang most of it, which
Really?
I thought was really weird. I never really saw him as a vocalist, but
Huh.
it's not bad. And then like at live shows, John Taylor predominantly played bass, but him and Duff would switch off on songs just for fun. And, like they'd do a lot of covers and stuff. They'd do like New Rose and stuff like that, and they do Sex Pistols songs, and they
Yeah.
had a huge catalog to pull from. They had Duran Duran, Sex
Yeah,
Pistols,
yeah,
Guns N' Roses. So I mean, they had a
That was a weird mix of. It
Yeah.
doesn't seem like some of those guys would mix as well as they did. And
No.
I have that album. I bought that album today.
did
Oh,
you
did you really?
Yeah,
one that grabbed it today?
it's really, really good.
Yeah,
and it's crazy how well that they mixed in like that.
Yeah,
how
it-
it all it seemed like they've been playing forever.
Yeah, and it was just one of those. It was just one of those bands that it's just they all fit together. And like I said, I mean Duff's really heavily influenced by punk ever since the early '80s and stuff like that. He was in some pretty big punk bands in Seattle before he got into Guns N' Roses. So he, I mean that influence is there. Obviously, Steve came from Sex Pistols, but then you add in John Taylor from Duran Duran.
Yeah, right. That's
But I mean, you get Matt Sorum has got a really kind of funky bass or drum groove to him too. So when those two kind of connected, it worked out pretty good. Really good tracks on there. I mean, the EP is really really good too. It's got features a song called Seattle Head. It was written by Duff. It's a really good song. That was actually supposed to be on his solo CD that never came out.
Yeah.
Called Beautiful Disease. This band actually got Matt kicked out of Guns N' Roses.
Really?
This is what got him fired. Because he's doing this, and Axl's like, no.
You're going to commit to one thing.
You got to record Chinese Democracy in 1997.
Yeah.
And it never, he's like, well, no, I want to do this because it's
Yeah.
fun. And he's like, that's when he
So
got the
did Duff, but Duff didn't get kicked out.
He was already out of Guns N' Roses.
He was already
Oh,
out of,
yeah,
because
he was already done by then?
he almost died. He
Yeah,
was,
the alcohol.
yeah, the
issues
appendix
that he had.
was, right? Is that what it was? It almost,
But yeah, appendicitis also.
Yeah, it almost burst. They said if he had another drink, he'd die.
Ugh.
So and that's all it took though. I mean, he hasn't had a drink since. Obviously, he's super healthy now, which is awesome. He's out doing Loaded and all the other stuff he does now.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know. It's a really good disc. There's 12 songs on it. I mean, it's hard to find now. I don't used record store or I mean, that's about the only place you can find this out of print. But I mean, you can find it pretty cheaply.
Well, there's a couple things that I wanted to interject on what people don't really realize about. If you guys can remember, John and Andy Taylor from Duran Duran in the '80s, formed a group called the Power Station, which was a very edgy, top 40-ish band with
With,
Robert Palmer
No.
and was it Tony Taylor on drums from Chick? I think that's his name.
I don't know.
Anyway, he's passed on now. And then also Steve Jones in the '80s. He came out with a solo album called something like Gasoline and something.
Yeah, it actually had Axl Rose and was on
Right.
there, and then a couple a lot of guys from the Cult I think were on there too.
I believe
Yeah,
so.
Ian
And-
Ashbury was
Yeah,
on that
yeah.
one. Yep.
But actually, it was Steve Jones converting over and doing like a hard rock metal type album. It wasn't a Sex Pistols sound at all.
Yeah, and this
So-
is actually really good. That album's really good, and Steve's actually got a pretty decent voice. There's a really cool track on there called Union. Have you checked that song out
I
yet?
checked them all out.
Yeah, Union. So it's
it's
like an autobiography of the Sex Pistols.
Yeah, who was the most messed up one, and it kind of went one. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
one to the
that's
other.
a very, very good CD.
And it's a very honest song too. It's like talking about like how Sid would turn his mother in for a couple coins, like that, just like really honest. And it was a real, I don't know, it's a really good disc. I mean, it's nothing like super special or nothing like that, but it's really cool to have that moment in time.
Yeah, because that kind of dives into the epitome of what a super group is. Like when you have Guns N' Roses, Duran Duran, all that kind of stuff coming along. So I mean that's neat to hear about. I mean,
Yeah, it was just a one-off thing, one album,
Yeah.
one 5-song
And usually
EP.
that's how it goes.
Yep.
Yeah.
It really does. I mean, because a lot of supergroups like that, you get those egos in there.
Yeah.
But this one wasn't really necessarily egos. This was just everybody else had to go off and do their own thing again.
They were never there to make a buck.
Right.
Oh no, and that's what it was. It was just them jamming together.
And it sounds like that too. It sounds like guys that are, they're all established, and it sounds like they're friends, and they're like, hey, we should just. And it sounded like they were just playing, and that kind of those vibrations came out on the album
Yeah.
where it was, it sounded. I don't know. It just made it all flow, and everything kind of worked together. And you're right. His voice is. I didn't know there's a couple songs on there that at first I had to go back and check because it sounded like David Bowie. His voice
Yeah.
sounded different in a bunch of different
Yeah,
ones.
there's like one or two songs that has John Taylor on there, and you can definitely tell
Yeah,
who
like
he
the
is.
second one, you can tell, yeah.
Yeah, and you definitely can tell Duff because he's got more of a punk voice than Steve Jones does.
Yes.
He's got that like, hey dude, kind of thing going on. And
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, I don't know, it's a good record. I love it. Like,
So
it's-
worth checking out then.
oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure,
I mean, you can usually find copies of it on eBay or Amazon.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're gonna
super
pay a little extra. Well, there was a couple on there. There was
I found one on Discogs, which is a really good CD user friendly site, and it's really fair priced, and it's like, I think I found mine for like $7.
Did you really?
Yeah.
It's pretty.
Yeah, that's good. I got mine for $10 on iTunes.
Oh, that's.
I was busy and I just was like, I want to check this out, and I heard a couple of the samples. And I was like, wow. And that's when I started reading about
Yeah.
all that stuff. And then I was working on my roof today, and I listened to that whole thing through
Yeah.
like 1.5 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good record. I just wish
It
there's
is.
they played live a lot, and there's stuff recorded like audio and video. I just wish some of that stuff would surface someday.
Yeah, I was
'Cause,
gonna
I mean,
say.
like they did like a couple shows at the Viper Room, obviously, where they played there a lot. They're just like Slash got up there and jammed with them. Ian from the Cult got up there and jammed with them a
yeah.
couple songs. I mean, that's even a bigger, like, just a party band. And basically that's what it is, just a big party band. All the guys, they toured in Europe for a little bit, obviously, and
So is it more of they didn't last because they just ended up doing all their separate things,
Yeah.
not so much bad blood or anything?
no, I actually talked to, this was actually kind of cool, I talked to Matt Sorm on Twitter about it. And it's like, when's going to be the next Neurotic Outsiders album? He goes, you know how hard it is to get all four of those random guys together? He goes,
Yeah.
he's like, it was a super fun band though. He's like, I would love to do another one. He goes, it's too hard anymore because obviously Duff's doing his own, like, he does that band Loaded now, and he goes all over the place. That's actually doing really well for him, so.
Yeah. I would imagine that's pretty tough to get a lot of these guys together.
Yeah.
You know, as opposed to my group, which it seems they're consistently dropping things.
Yeah.
You know, every couple of years and then doing the
This
tours.
was
So
something
this is
about
hard.
20 years ago now,
Yeah.
you know, which was kind of crazy to think
And if
about.
he's still saying it's hard, you know, I'd imagine, you know, with
Yeah.
all of these bands still actively playing and touring.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's pretty awesome though that you know a band like that gets together because
Yeah.
it's kind of exciting to hear that there's a jam band like that or just something.
Yeah, I
good
mean, that's
music
why I was
that
like,
comes out.
GNR is my favorite band, so I was like over the moon when I heard about Velvet Revolver too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just Guns N' Roses with Scott from
Yeah.
Yeah.
STP, and that was a great.
Yeah, I
band.
like Stone Temple Pilots a lot. They were pretty good. How would you rate how would you rate that against
Ooh,
these guys?
oof.
Like Velvet
You know,
Revolver
I
against
think
it was a totally different
Neurotic
sound.
yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's different.
But I think Velvet Revolver is more of a band than Neurotic Outsiders
Yeah,
was. I
I
think
think-
Neurotic Outsiders was four guys, basically like us, just sitting around. Hey, let's
Right.
write some tunes. That's basically what it was. There was definitely no pressure from record label or anything like that because it was on Maverick.
Right.
It was basically put out by them. Velvet Revolver, they were on a huge label.
Right,
And
and
they
you're
had-
right. I think they did intend that to be a prolonged band until Scott kept on.
Yeah, I mean,
screwing
and
up
it
like
was
always.
definitely promoted as
Yeah.
here's three members from Guns N' Roses with a guy from one of the biggest bands in the '90s,
Yeah.
with a guy that was in like '80s, '90s punk bands.
Yeah.
You know, and that's basically. I mean, he's in what Reagan's Youth.
He was also in the Suicidal Tendencies for his
Yeah. See, I mean, plug all those names in there. I mean, you put Slash, Duff, and Matt together in a room, you're gonna get album sales. That's just the way it is. And then add Scott in there, clean at the time.
I don't think
No.
I don't
No,
really believe it was
well,
clean.
Slash wasn't even clean then.
Yeah.
If you read his book, he was on. He just found out how to. He's injecting oxy.
Oh,
Oh,
Yeah.
But he
Yeah,
likes to party there, huh?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's when he decided that him and Scott had to go to separate ways.
probably a good idea.
Yeah.
Oh.
So
Matt surprised it.
hey man,
He's still alive, actually.
you
No.
know, like you said, it's just weird when you have the ones that work and the ones that don't work. So
I wish Velvet Revolver would have lasted a little bit longer. I mean, that CD's in my car right now. That's what I'm listening to when I'm driving here. But it's just one of those things. Like, I mean, you get all those guys together. Everybody has their own demons. I mean, this band was just like a jam band, basically. You know, and they got up and jammed and made a record.
that's good. So we're 2 for 2 on positive ones. So
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a thud. I don't think. I mean, I think that record's really good. Even if you can find a 5-song EP.
The Angelina.
Yeah, Angelina. That's a great 5 songs.
It was a Japanese release only.
Yeah, I got that too. I paid like $35 for that.
Yeah.
oh man,
But it's got the only song on there was on the original disc is Jerk. And then
Oh, was that the first song? No, the
It's like
first song
is Nasty Ho.
is Nasty Ho, and when I saw it, I glanced at it and I thought it said Nasty Ho.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's probably just some like
Nasty Ho.
Asian city somewhere. And then I started listening to it, and I was like, oh no, this is a Nasty Ho.
Was it spelled like Nasty Ho?
Yeah, it was,
yeah,
but I
yeah.
was
Nasty Ho.
like, I was climbing the
Because it's
ladder, and I
Asian.
was like, Nastejo, okay, and I put it in my, and I was like, wait, this is not about
Oh, my
some
God.
city in
Like some
Japan.
ancient temple or something. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's a really good disc, and I think I don't know. I'm really surprised at how well Steve Jones wrote songs because
Yeah.
he didn't really write songs for the Sex Pistols. That was mostly
Yeah.
Johnny. So I mean,
Rotten.
Johnny Rotten.
Yeah, man.
But and he had a really weird ass sense of humor too. But so like, I think if those two both were wrote on that first record, it could have been even better. But
Oh, yeah.
anyway, so that's what I brought to the table.
Awesome.
Literally.
Well, yeah, literally. We had again, I just want to say thanks to Roztox for being able to
Bailing us
accommodate
out.
us. So
Yeah.
it was a
Yeah,
nice
that's
setup
nice
we
of
got
them.
here.
It's kind of a last minute thing.
So I mean, I'm hoping it keeps with the flow. So, Mr. Gustafson, what did you bring? Because
All right.
can we keep it positive, or are we gonna have to dip down a little bit? What are we doing?
Well, so I found out what we were doing.
yeah.
And so Eric called me and he said that we're doing the top disco albums of the late 70s, early 80s. So I stayed up all night.
You're never invited to a podcast ever
I
again.
had ABBA, I had the
Yeah.
Bee Gees, I even had a track from Pink Floyd.
Oh,
And then at the
what?
last minute, and then at the last minute he was like, you know what, we're just going to do super groups.
Oh.
So I was all pissed.
This guy's never invited to another podcast ever again.
I don't know. I kind of like it. Probably
So
learned
I
that.
was thinking about the super groups and stuff like that, and I didn't want to, like, I like Cream a lot, but I mean, that's just such a,
Yeah.
I mean, everybody knows about Cream. And by the way, I saw this really cool documentary on Ginger Baker. It's called Beware of Mr. Baker. I don't know if you guys have seen that.
No, I've never heard of it.
It's a really, really good documentary. That guy is insane. He lives in Africa now, and he got into music
really?
through doing jazz and stuff like that. And he was, huge into heroin. All those guys were. And
Oh,
Jack
yeah.
Bruce had his issues as well and everything. I really like Jack Bruce, and I love that band, but I wanted to do something a little bit different. So I started looking at other stuff. I used to like Oysterhead. I really like, and there's a band called Banyan, and Jay Mascis from Dinosaur Jr.'s got some kind of cool collaborations. But as I kept thinking about it, I ended up just going with Mad Season,
Oh, cool.
Oh, yeah.
who's one of my all-time favorite bands. Which I didn't know was. I just thought it was a, Lane from Alice in Chains. I thought he just did like a little side thing and did a couple shows. I didn't know it was like an actual, like an actual
full-on project.
full-on project band. And like we were talking about, it seems like a lot of people that were established, they just get together and they hang out and there's
Yeah.
no pressure. To me, this band seemed like these were a bunch of messed up guys and they were all like trying to get straight. And I think it seemed like they all came together and they made this, and they're all trying to, like, for example, Saunders, the bass player, he met the guitar player from Mad Season who plays in Pearl Jam. They met in rehab.
Yeah.
And then, let's see. So it's Alice in Chains, and it's
Well, it's Screaming Trees, Barrett Martin.
Screaming Trees. There you go. And that's another band that I really liked from that time era.
Oh, yeah.
And Mike McCready from Pearl Jam.
Right.
And then John Baker Saunders from the Lamont Cranston Band, which is a
Right,
blues
and so
band.
Saunders and McCree, right, they met in rehab, and they were both
Right.
trying to kick heroin. And then Lane, of course, he just is, just always been pretty depressed and messed up.
Yeah.
So when I heard this band, it was just really deep and super, super heavy, and it wasn't like that typical super group where everyone's like, let's hang out and jam and have it. It was, like everything was just. It was just really dark, and I think, and that's not, that doesn't make for a great time, really, but it made a huge impression on me because the lyrics that Lane, he's always been real honest about his lyrics and things like
Yeah.
that. It's like personal with Alice in Chains, but with Alice in Chains, it was more like he would sing things like, "What's your drug of choice? Well, what have you got? I don't go broke, and I do it," all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But in Mad Season, it was more like, I'm losing this battle and I'm not gonna make it, and everything, and just the way the bass lines and everything flowed with it. It was a really dark and heavy thing, and you just kind of knew it wasn't gonna last. You just knew, like, and that's maybe another reason why I liked it, because when you were listening to it, you just knew it wasn't gonna.
Yeah.
That just wasn't gonna. And then you can of course interject anytime, Eric, because
Well,
I know that
you guys know. I don't know if you guys know this, but this is my favorite album
Yeah.
of all time.
Yeah.
I mean, it was because it was right when the grunge scene was starting to die off, and these guys were trying to maybe diversify themselves
Yeah.
because it was not a grunge album.
Right. No, it wasn't. And I think one of the reasons why it was dying off because everybody was freaking just dying. Period.
Right. Yeah, I mean, heroin was so huge
and
then.
and
I
in
mean,
that
it's-
in that group of that type of music, it was just and I think at that point people were trying to get out of there, and I think that band came together a lot because
During the
of
mid
stuff like
'90s,
that.
we lost a lot of lead singers to
yeah.
heroin.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Now was this more of a project during their own respective bands, or was this post?
Well,
Alice in
they were
Chains?
all. I think they're all on. Well, like you said, they met in rehab, so I think they were all on break. Really,
Right.
like,
Well, Pearl Jam was huge still,
Yeah.
and they were in between stuff. And I think I'm not sure, but I think they had just got done doing the album and touring, and that's when he was all messed up, and he went into rehab after that. Alice in Chains they were sort of just falling apart.
Yeah.
I believe at that time.
It
Yeah,
was right
that
when the
was
Three-Legged
after-
Dog album.
Yeah,
came out.
that was about Three-Legged Dog. Yeah, Dirt everyone kind of knew them, and they were just struggling through everything. And another really cool thing is that I didn't know that whole thing was done in a week's time.
Really?
So it was
That's
all
quick.
they just rehearsed it a couple times, and boom, they just went in.
that's
there.
when you get your most honest
Yeah.
music, though. Sorry.
Right, and so it all just clicked.
Well, it's kind of funny that you say that too, is because also on "Long Gone Day," the track I think it was the fourth song, "Long Gone Day." They have a jazz fusion with a saxophone, but Mark Lanigan, the lead singer from the Screaming Trees, sings a duet with Lane Staley on that track, and it is
yeah,
probably
that's the 8th song. On
Is
yeah.
it the 8th song?
I'm looking at it right
It
now.
is the most incredible song when you hear it, because it just sounds like this band was meant to be for a long period of time.
Right.
It just seemed like every type of input musically they put into this thing, whether it was straight rock or if it was a fusion type song, everything just worked. They caught lightning in a bottle. That's what they did.
He even covered a John Lennon song, and
Yes.
it sounded like it was their own song. And I love the Beatles and John Lennon. The "I Don't Want to Be a Soldier." And
Yep.
they covered that, and it sounded. I mean, it fit perfectly
Wow.
in with everything.
Well,
It was a really-
have you watched? I'm glad to say that I own Live at the Moor,
Yeah.
the concert,
I saw some of that on
and
YouTube. I
it
don't
is
own
the
it.
most electrifying live show.
That's one thing I just haven't got enough dough scratched together yet for that deluxe edition that just
Right.
came out.
Yeah.
Came out like a little. It's been out for
About a
one
year.
year.
Yeah.
When I saw it, I was like, I have to get that. It's just one of those things I haven't picked
Is
up.
it the
yet,
one
but-
that you got?
Yeah, it was one I showed you that night.
And what I was going to say about that show, because you popped it in while we were discussing some stuff one night, that show was incredible. The energy was amazing in that audience that night.
Right. Well, the
So-
Moor is probably just a little bit bigger than what the Adler Theater is,
Yeah.
from what I can get out of it. And once again, it was they recorded it just the right night. They caught lightning
Yeah.
in a bottle. Mark Lanigan came on and sang "Long Gone Day" with Lane Staley. Everything just went well that night,
Right.
and it was And I'm not going to use that adjective, amazing, but it was.
It's
Well,
magic,
because
man.
they showed it on TV when MTV played videos.
Yeah.
They showed it live, that night of it happening, and it was like, wow,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
a show! Can you imagine being there? Can you imagine being 18, 19, 20, 22 years old?
Those are the kind of shows where you just. I was lucky enough to live in Chicago, and there was tons of small venues like that, and I got to see some really cool bands that were, I saw some bands in, the United Center, and that's kind of, but when you go and you see a band like that, like a heavy band or just a band that they're so good, they've been playing so long that, if they take a wrong turn, they can,
Right.
they can
Yeah.
take the U-turn at the perfect time and bring everything back.
Yeah.
And you see a band in like a small show like that, it's
Oh, yeah.
so cool.
Yeah, like just the small venues up there, like the Metro and all
I
that.
love
Yeah, the
the
Metro.
They
We
give
saw,
you-
I saw Iggy Pop at the Metro.
Did
I
you?
was right in the
What?
front. My wife Angie, I think we were still dating at the time, but we got there early. And Mike Watt was playing bass for him.
Yep.
and there was a fence between the stage and us, and so I was like, holding the fence, and my wife and Angie was right here, and everyone was pushing on me, and it was the coolest show. He got out, and all the lights were out, and he was like on his knees playing an acoustic guitar, real slow. Nice. It was when the Avenue B CD came out, so he had been on. He wasn't back with Stooges or anything. Yeah. And although he did have a Stooge drummer there, but anyway. My wife got on stage with him.
What?
Yeah, and it was the coolest thing. And I tried to get on stage with him, and the security guard kept pushing me back. I was like, "No, you don't understand. I want to go that way. That's my girlfriend." But evidently, he was only letting girls up on stage because there was no guys.
Hey, you're not a pretty girl.
And like the third time he pushed me back in the crowd is when I was like, the light bulb went out, and I was like, "Oh, I get it. I'll just wait."
Well, back to the Mad Season thing here. Sorry that we're
no, that's all right. I just started thinking about small, like intimate shows.
Yeah. When you decided that you were going to do the Mad Season thing, I was like, well, this is my favorite album of all time. I didn't realize that when they first got together, they had just wrote some music, and Mike McCready had already booked them a show at a place called the Crocodile Cafe in Seattle. They had no lyrics, no anything ready, prepared, and they had to play a show. And they weren't even called Mad Season at the time. They were called the Gacy Bunch, named after John Wayne Gacy, the murderer,
right.
and, the Brady
Bunch.
Bunch. Well, obviously, they didn't allow that. But one thing I did notice here is that it was recorded at Bad Animal Studio, owned by Ann and Nancy Wilson from Heart.
Yeah, that's right.
Where it was
Yeah, that's
recorded.
right.
So I thought that was pretty cool when I looked that up, because I can't look enough up about that album.
Right. Even the cover, just the art, the cover
that
art is
artwork was
awesome.
really
the whole
cool.
thing about
So
that.
is that all they recorded? Was
Yeah,
that just
just
that one record?
Well, the deluxe edition that came out, they had some stuff in the vault.
Okay.
And they released it.
You know what I think released yesterday? I think no, it wasn't yesterday. Record Store Day did have a Mad Season release one year, and I went to go look on eBay for it. Man, it is pricey.
Well,
I don't remember what it is, but I think it's like a red vinyl.
That was long sought after. Was that deluxe edition? It's one of those things people were waiting for forever.
Yeah.
And like honestly now, I mean, obviously we all know there's that Temple of the Dog battle going on. And I'm sure once that gets settled and Chris Cornell gets the tapes back, or however that's going to work out, I'm sure we'll see a Temple of the Dog
release like that.
deluxe thing, which
So do you guys think that there's maybe like more tracks maybe? Or
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
Well, here's the thing: is that I'm a prized possession owner of I have the Matt Pinfield interview on CD.
Matt Pinfield.
Well, when it first came out and they released the first 3 tracks at the release party of this they actually radio stations got a copy of the CD where it was, they played it on the air on the radio. It was Matt Pinfield interviewing all the members of Mad Season and this and that. They played, here's a track from this album come out. I have that.
That's
I have that.
Wow.
And it's really cool, because it's not the whole album. They just play tracks of it, and it's just more Q&A, banter things with the members. It's very, very cool.
So I guess the reason you picked this then is you were able to just really take in that experience then, Eric.
Yeah, and I never got to see him or anything like that, but I loved, I love the Screaming Trees, and I loved Alice in Chains, and I knew some of those songs, but then when I found out that's who the band was, then I bought that, and actually Eric told me that, it was a few years ago, and
I think we were at the Fishbone show, right?
What's that?
When we were down at the Fishbone show,
we went to go see Fishbone?
Yeah.
Maybe. That might have been it. I don't know. Yeah. But
I'm gonna leave this out now.
It's such a heavy, dark, deep.
Well, that and also is Lane Staley dies shortly after this album comes out, and what's really petrifying is John Baker Sanders, he died of a drug overdose 3 years after Lane Staley died.
Yeah,
so them ever making any type of music at all.
Right. And I think that they kind of considered doing something, but then when that Saunders, the bass player, died also, they're just like, that's it, we're done, just forget the whole thing.
Yeah. And like I said, during the 90s, there was a lot of lead singers in general that lost,
Well, I just really appreciated, also that they brought in some horns to do some fusion stuff to that album, so that was really
and
cool.
a xylophone. Did you hear the xylophone?
Yes, they did.
How
a
do you make that badass?
It was awesome.
I don't know how they did the bass with the xylophone.
Yeah,
and that in itself is
very cool.
Right? Yeah.
That's I think I'm gonna have to give that one another listen.
Oh, it's a must.
That's what I was just thinking too.
I mean, just that show that we were watching was great, and even the listening stuff that we, had already popped in every once in a while. pretty amazing. So, sorry, there you go.
We need a bell. We just need
I
a bell for
forgot
amazing and
I
customer.
I forgot it this time.
I'm sure I got an app
Yeah,
here.
I
I
was
can
gonna
like
say,
make some sort of bell.
No,
or
it's yours.
Did you
fart
hear
or
it?
something.
Did you hear it? Okay.
Yeah.
We just need one of those little handbell.
Yeah,
Just
we
ding,
do.
ding. You
Well,
know.
the basically bell, but anyways, well, I mean, I see loud in your title. The bell would be loud because I'm sure we say things that we probably shouldn't say, like amazing or shit or see. I don't want to
Ding.
string it. I don't want to string it. But what do we got from you,
Well,
Nez?
if you're wanting something positive, I don't have anything positive,
Okay.
a positive feel to it. But, you know, we all know that Ozzy and Sharon Osbourne are the biggest douchebags on the planet Earth. But,
I think it's more
He
Sharon.
I think Sharon is pulling the strings.
well, you know, let's face it here. You know, Ozzy Osbourne in his solo and his Black Sabbath years, he never wrote a song.
Right.
He plays 0 instruments. He played the harmonica on Sweet Leaf.
Yeah,
Is that what it was?
Something like that, yeah.
And that's basically all he can do. But anyway, when he was booted out of Black Sabbath, you know, he started his solo career with the Blizzard of Oz.
Yeah.
The first project of his, and then it was the Diary of a Madman. Well, he had 2 members of the Ozzy Osbourne band, which was Bob Daisley and Lee Kerslake. Bob Daisley was Ozzy's bass player, and Lee Kerslake was the drummer for those 2 albums. Well, those 2 guys wrote a lot of tunes for those 2 albums. They were the songwriters for that. They wrote I Don't Know, Crazy Train, Flying High Again, Mr. Crowley, Tonight, and Over the Mountain. They wrote those songs.
They wrote them.
They wrote those songs. Well, in 2002, Sharon and Ozzy they remastered those albums and took Kerslake and Daisley out of the credits of any songwriting.
Really?
And for some reason they put Rudy Sarzo and Tommy Aldridge as the songwriters for that, which they were just the musicians in the remasters to put the licks
Right.
back down on
Yeah.
the songs.
They're session
they,
guys.
they completely took off their recordings of the album and made those guys retrack everything. The only person that got left alone, obviously, was Randy Rhoads during those years. But everything else, they took off those the drums, the original drums and bass. And those guys did sessions over them. And if I'm not trying to jump over you.
No, go ahead.
But I mean, there was an interview a couple of years later because obviously that got destroyed by everybody. And Ozzy's like, he even said like, I didn't want it to happen. It was just politics or some crap like that. But then when they re-released it again, they released both of those records again, like with the live show. I think the originals were put back on.
What ended up happening was in 2002,
I
2003,
think they got sued.
Kerslake and Daisley sued the Osbournes, and they got their money to them. So since they had the rights to these songs, and they decided like, well, let's put a band together and let's do the songs all over again with our own singer and our own band. Well, Don Airey, also the keyboardist for Deep Purple now, he took over for John Lord when John Lord retired and then passed away. But Don Airey was also the keyboard session for Ozzy in that album. So they brought Don Airey in to play for Living Loud as well. And I don't think I announced what I was doing, but
No.
Living Loud is the band that I'm doing. That's the recreation. And then they brought in Steve Morris from Kansas, Deep Purple, Dixie Dregs to play the lead guitar player for them. So what ended up happening here is they recorded this album. They brought in Jimmy Barnes to be the lead vocalist. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with Jimmy Barnes or not. Jimmy Barnes was claimed to fame was he was a duet with In Excess for the Lost Boys soundtrack. Remember the song "Gonna Have a Good Time Tonight"? Good Time Boys.
Yeah.
He was the singer, and that he had one release solo album called like Freight Train Heart, and he totally flopped in the United States. But he was still big in Australia. That's where he's from. He's Australian, so he went back to Australia. Well, anyway, he discovered that he's a great crooner. He sang in the crooner style like Michael Bublé does over in Australia. Well, these members of Living Loud grabbed him and said, "Hey, can you sing these songs for us? Because we own the rights to these songs." And he did. They brought him on, and the album is not great, but it was just, I think the revenge for the members that got their money and got their rights back onto the songs, and we can do this too. They made the album, they put it out, it didn't sell well.
Right.
They even did a live show in Sydney, Australia when Deep Purple, when Morris and Don Airey were touring Australia. And since Jimmy Barnes lives in Australia, the other two members came over and they played in Sydney, played 2 shows, and that was it. They played in Sydney, Australia.
Like ever, just 2 shows.
2 shows ever.
Oh,
and
wow.
it was one was recorded. It was recorded. You can buy it. It's live in Sydney. It was a 2 CD DVD combo. It's Jimmy Barnes singing the stuff that Ozzy sang.
All right.
It's very, is it extra special? No, it's not. But what it is, it's basically, it's good to see Sharon and Ozzy not getting away with crushing people like they've done. They got it back to them, and so.
It's sort of like an FU,
They weren't doing it to make money. They weren't doing it, obviously, to, those guys are already established musicians. They already have their money. It was basically a middle finger in the air saying, we got your songs.
Yeah.
We got our songs back.
Yeah. And, I mean, Ozzy's done that. I mean, look what he did to J.K. Lee. I mean, he wrote, was that album he played on Speak of the Devil? Is that
Yep.
Oh, The Ultimate Sin.
The Ultimate Sin,
And,
yep.
and Speaking of the Devil's the live disc.
Yep.
I mean, I wonder what was going through their minds during this whole process, like being able to get it back, and then finally being able to record, and then saying, hey, were they thinking, oh, maybe this could sell pretty good, since people know the tracks? You think maybe they had a hint of wanting some money off of it, or a direct, listen, we got our stuff back, not us back. We got our stuff back, so we're going to do it the way we want to. Then.
I just know I've read, some articles and some things about it, and according, to Daisley and Kerslake, those guys, Bob Daisley was originally from Uriah Heep back in Uriah Heep's heyday, and Kerslake, he was a part of Steve Morse band. He did some periodic things with other bands. He was already an established guy, so, I just think it was one of those it was a subject, we had our music stolen from us, legally we got it back, we wanted to have our own voice sing it.
Right.
And it was just for them. I think it was a peace of mind album, And it was interesting. It's kind of an interesting thing to have in your collection.
Yeah.
You own it?
It's really.
I own it. I actually own it. Yeah.
Is that what you brought today?
Yeah, I brought it. And so it was just kind of refreshing to see the empire of the Osbournes get taken down legally, because usually they're the ones trying to take people down legally.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you,
That's pretty interesting.
that's a pretty solid, good story, though. Of course, you said it may not have done the best, but it was some musicians getting their work back. So I think that kind of.
Well, I mean, they were the music industry somewhat believed in them because they were on Capitol Records here in America, and Liberation Music over in Australia and probably Europe too, or whatever. But I mean, it was basically just an album of just saying, let's just do this so we can say that we did it.
Yeah.
Right.
And maybe that way people know that it's our stuff,
Right.
Oh, wow.
And the only problem, the PR for it, the marketing for it was pretty poor. I didn't really know anything about it until about 3 years ago.
Oh, okay.
So, and that's it, so something different.
Hey, and I will say that I think tonight did keep with the trend of kind of positivity, because, like I was saying, they get their stuff back. Maybe not so much with the Mad Season, but I think what I gather from the Mad Season is that guys that were, had issues got together to make something magical.
I
and it
agree.
worked out for them.
Yeah.
And as far as the Neurotic Outsiders, just a bunch of guys getting together, doing what they love, and it worked for them. And even with Hell Yeah, to me personally, I view that as maybe like a step in a right step in the grieving process for Vinnie Paul, and I'm glad it's doing successful for it's a success for him. So it does keep on the trend. So I think this topic was excellent, and there can be more. There's all kinds of super groups. So maybe we'll get to a part 2 someday, guys. So.
Well, the nice thing about it is you can do side projects and super groups, and you can keep them separate. And the amount of side projects are endless.
Oh yeah.
The amount of super groups we could probably do many of podcasts about that.
I mean, I'm very open for that, but I also like the side project deal, because there are tons of side projects for everybody. I know, I know there's a couple ones from Weezer and some stuff that I listen to too. So, hey, I think this is a success. We turned poop. We turned poop into a nice product tonight.
Not too
Into a
bad.
nice flush.
Nice still flush, nice flush there. The toilet bowl's all clean.
Yeah.
I can't thank Roz Talks enough for letting us come up here
Very nice.
and do that. And you know, like I said, once we get stuff straightened out with other places, hey, we got some more shows coming for you. But you know, I just want to take the time real quick while we have a couple minutes to say thanks. I go and I look at the views on YouTube and I see the feedback in the group. I want to say thanks to everybody that's listening, to everybody that's participating, to anybody that wants to be a guest. I mean, and to the guests that we've already started bringing in, like Herb and Mitchell and now Eric here. Thanks, you know, for being a part of this, and hopefully we're gonna keep trying to, you know, grow this.
It's honestly, it like grows every week. If you look at the YouTube views,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you
it
look
does.
at the new Facebook page for Side C Podcast,
Yeah,
is
oh,
doing
that's
really
right.
well. So I mean, it's pretty cool getting up in the morning or whatever and seeing all the notifications going off. So
Well, I think this is a good time also to interject some things here. Is that we are getting sponsorship funding. We will be having T-shirts and vinyl stickers made. We will be selling them at our podcast locations when we're out in the public here at different establishments.
Yep.
So if you're listening and you would like to partake and have a Side Seat Podcast T-shirt, we'll be selling them for a reasonable price.
Right.
And you know, that's a good place also too. If you know, if there's a good local show around, wear the Side Seat Podcast shirt. Go with pride. People are going to want to know. You'll have the sponsorship on your back. It's good advertising for our sponsors as well.
And it's not just because we want to get shirts made. It's because, you know, it helps us out to give you guys a better product. You know, we want to get, you know, a nice setup with microphones. We want to get a nice setup with maybe a computer, you know, better editing here. You know, we're just, like I said, the main goal of this podcast is just for fans of music to get together and talk about all sorts of different things. But we want to make it a nice, presentable product
Yeah.
for all of you guys. So again, thanks for the listening. Thanks for all that. You know, the Roz Talks and whatnot.
One thing Benjamin here at Roz Tax wanted me to mention is that they do a live band here on Mondays through Day Trotter.
Oh, yeah.
It's called Molar Mondays.
Molar.
And I'm not quite sure the time it begins, but I'm guessing probably 8 o'clock would be a fair
Probably about
guess.
7 or 8, yeah.
7 or 8. Anyway, it's called Molar Mondays, and it's presented by Day Trotter. So, and Day Trotter's an awesome thing that's here in the Quad Cities.
Yes,
as well.
I'm very aware of them, and they've had plenty of press in here around locally because I know they have a studio that they record at. I think they had a vinyl with Laura James Grace or
I
James
believe
Grace.
they did, yes.
they
that-
had sorry.
No,
they,
you're right.
They had the drummer from Alkaline Trio. He played there when
Yeah.
before he played.
So-
They had Pedro the Lion.
Yeah,
you know,
so
stuff like
go check them out on Facebook, Roz Talks QC, I think it is, and Day Trotter. You can find them all online. We'll get the stuff up, but thank you again for having us. Eric, thank you for coming out.
Yeah,
Appreciate it. Good
thank you
job.
so much. I love talking about music anytime, man.
Oh,
This
well,
was
we'll
fun.
definitely-
And we got beer, and we're
Yeah.
sitting in this awesome place. It was
Yeah,
the
exactly.
best.
So,
Turned out great.
Well, you know, I got to interject here on one
Always,
thing. Yes,
always.
and like our friend Gene Simmons once said to us, God gave rock and roll to you.
Yeah, and Satan?
Let's hope he did a little bit.
All right, guys, let's get on out of here.
Who wants a beer?
Yeah, I want to.